Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. In this video, I have two articles that I'm pretty excited about that I want to share with you, especially this one from Newsroom. See what Elder Cook talked about with the president of Argentina. Now, I tend to think that this was a significant event, and I'll explain why in just a minute. I put both of the events from these two articles on one of my spreadsheets, but there's a little bit of context that I want to share with you first, so you can understand why I think that this is important. Now, I'm sorry if this is repetitious, but we're going to be talking about the prophecy of the two witnesses. And most of you already know that I tend to believe that most prophecy is going to play out in natural ways. And that's based on things that we've heard from the prophets and the apostles, that most of the time prophecy plays out in natural ways. It can be spectacular. It can be obvious, but many more times it's not. And I think that that's the case when it comes to the two witnesses. Now, I want to share this idea from Victor L. Ludlow, who I don't know if he still is, but was at least a professor at BYU. This is a Desert News article called Mideast Prophecies Wow BYU Audience. This is from 2010. And at the end, he talks about the two witnesses. It says, "When will two prophets come to the Holy Land? It's already happening. It's a common reality to people in the Middle East," Ludlow said. Ludlow tells students at BYU Jerusalem they are in the right place if they want to meet a general authority. The top place to meet one of the brethren is church headquarters. The second is Provo, specifically the Missionary Training Center. The third is in the Holy Land. So I think that's a really interesting concept, and there are parts of the scriptures that are symbolic. So some people will say, no, it literally has to be two individuals, no more, no less, and they're going to be preaching in the streets of Jerusalem for 3.5 years. And while that can be the case, maybe that's exactly how it'll happen, I wouldn't be surprised if those numbers are symbolic. So, for example, you have the law of 2 or 3 witnesses. Maybe that's what we're talking about here. You have multiple witnesses from multiple prophets, which would include the apostles because they're also prophets, seers, and revelators. And maybe it's nothing more than that. And when we're talking about Jerusalem, again, you can take it literally and think that it means, no, they strictly have to be within the city limits of Jerusalem. Or it could be that Jerusalem is symbolic of Judaism. Just like when we talk about Zion, it is going to be a city, but it also refers to the entirety of the church. In this case, with Jews, when we're talking about Jerusalem, maybe it's talking about all of the Jews throughout the world in contact that they have with prophets and apostles. And then 3.5, that's another subject, but when you study in the Institute Student Manual, it talks about the fact that that also seems to be a symbolic number, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So with that being said, and before we get into the two articles that I want to share today, I want to go back to 2018. One of the first things that President Nelson did when he became president of the church is he went on a global ministry tour to 7 countries outside of the United States. And him and, at the time, Elder Holland went to Jerusalem. Here they are at the BYU Jerusalem Center. There's the Temple Mount in the background. I don't know how much contact they had with Jews while they were there. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, in that there were Jews that were aware of their trip to Jerusalem. Maybe it was in the local news. I don't know. But you had this take place, and while they were there, President Nelson updated or recorded a new Special Witness of Christ video. This is under the Jesus Christ part of the Gospel Library. So now that he was president of the church, he wanted to have a new Special Witness of Christ video, and he did it from Jerusalem. And interestingly, you have all these other ones with the other 15, but you have this one from President Holland from I don't know what year, probably in the 90s. And his was also from Jerusalem. So it's interesting that these kind of like official videos where they testify of Christ and they give their special witness, two of them are from Jerusalem. That's where they were recorded. One more thing about this trip. There was this article written in the Deseret News, April 14th, 2018. President Nelson cancels visits to local sites, leaves Jerusalem as tensions rise in Middle East. And man, just 5 years later, tensions would really rise. So maybe that was kind of a foreshadowing. I'm not going to read this whole thing, just a couple parts. Starting right here. President Nelson and Elder Holland offered messages of hope from the grounds of the BYU Jerusalem Center. Elder Holland said President Nelson, quote unquote, decisively and instantly determined that his first major gesture beyond LDS Church headquarters would be a visit to Jerusalem. I wonder why. Well, we get at least part of that reason. Could be the whole reason, but President Nelson said he had symbolic reasons for planning the global trip as he did. We wanted to start in Jerusalem to fortify ourselves with the message of the Lord Jesus Christ right from its very inception, here where he was born, where he lived, where he ministered, and where he was crucified. Okay, later on, toward the end of the article, but he added, the location does not diminish the event. Quote, this is President Holland speaking. And he likes to drop breadcrumbs, by the way. He says, I suspect none of us in this room can understand the significance of this day. ... But we will. Well, I don't know, but I get a feeling maybe as to what the significance was of that day. I tend to think that, I mean, I don't think that, well, it could be that the both of them fulfilled it, but I feel like this was probably, along with all the other prophets and apostles that have gone to the Holy Land and had contact with Jews throughout the world, I feel like this was a landmark moment. So that's something to think about. Later on, this was 2 years before President Nelson became president of the church. Here you have, at the time, Elder Holland and Elder Cook meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, as well as the mayor of Jerusalem and other prominent figures in Israel. Okay, so we're having some pretty significant contact with the Jews, and I'm trying to keep track of all of it on this spreadsheet. And I know that I don't have it all. And right now, it's limited to these columns right here, starting with column K. Anytime that a prophet or apostle has met with somebody that is Jewish, whether they're Israeli or a Jew from another country. And there has been a lot. You go all the way back, let's see, to 1841, when Elder Orson Hyde traveled to Jerusalem and dedicated the land for the return of the Jews. So this is the first one that I'm aware of. But if you have any other accounts of a prophet or apostle meeting with somebody that's Jewish or traveling to Israel or Jerusalem, let me know. Since that time, there were other dedications of the land of Israel. It wasn't just that one. There were several others. I think like maybe 6 or 7. I'm not sure, but here they are. I'm also tracking any time that prophets or apostles go to Missouri. I actually have another timeline for that, but I'm kind of like doing both of these together. But anyway, you have a lot, okay? Elder Lund, Elder Lyman, Elder Talmage, Elder Widsoe, Elder Richards, that's Missouri, President Harold B. Lee, President Spencer W. Kimball, President Howard W. Hunter, Here's the Tabernacle Choir. Oh, I guess I'm tracking that too. Okay, I'm opening it up for like any like church leadership or the Tabernacle Choir. President Hinckley 2 times. And then look at all these recently. Elder Anderson, Elder Holland, Elder Redland, President Nelson, Elder Holland, Elder Bednar, Elder Cook, Elder Uchtdorf, Elder Anderson, Elder Cook, Elder Stevenson, Elder Cook. So the church is having a lot of contact with Jews, both inside and outside of Israel. And interestingly, we're about to get into this article about Elder Cook meeting with the president of Argentina, but it seems like he especially has had a lot of contact with the Jews recently. It makes me wonder about this quote. This is on my quotes A through Z spreadsheet for Jeffrey R. Holland. This is from Church News, June 6, 2018. Elder Holland says, I have been the church's principal contact with the Jewish community for just over 40 years, and it has been one of the sweetest associations in my life. Well, I wonder if that mantle has been passed on to Elder Cook, because now President Holland is the acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. So I wonder if now it's Elder Cook. There was a time where it seemed like Elder Bednar was kind of in charge of like the Middle East. He like oversaw it, but whatever the case, Elder Cook nowadays is meeting with a lot of Jews, and I think he might now be the principal contact. So with that being said, let's go back to this, see what Elder Cook talked about with the president of Argentina. By the way, I want to highlight this Instagram account. This is Cami Summer. Her and her family, she's been a fan of my channel, and recently she let me know that she was coming to Independence, like to move here. She moved here with her family. She's a singer, and she's from Argentina. So we've been covering a bunch of like Argentina articles and talks, like where Argentina comes up, and so it just makes me think about her. But I want to give her a shout out, so make sure to follow her on Instagram. She's almost at 20,000, so maybe you can help her cross the line and get to 20,000. But anyway, let's look at this. Elder Quinton Cook of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints met with Argentine President Javier Milei on August 20th, 2025 at the country's presidential palace. Now, I don't know if you've been following him or not, but it turns out that he plans to convert to Judaism. So that's why I have him on the spreadsheet. Now take a look at this really quick. So back in 2016, you have Elders Holland and Cook meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, a head of state. And now, and I meant to highlight this, now we have Elder Cook meeting with another head of state that will be Jewish, according to the Jewish definition of Jewish. But there's a couple things to consider. So number one, let's go to Times of Israel. Argentina's Milei wants Jewish Nobel for Israel, or wins Jewish Nobel for Israel support in break with tradition. Milei was raised Catholic, but has also famously been drawn to Judaism, said he intends to convert once he leaves office. He says it would be impossible to serve as president and observe Shabbat fully, a commitment that requires abstaining from work. So it looks like it's not going to happen until after he leaves office. But in another sense, I think he may already be Jewish, just not by the Jewish definition. This is Ynet. Argentina's president reveals his Jewish heritage. Argentinian President Javier Milei is known as a fervent supporter of Israel. In February, he visited Israel, and during the trip, he prayed at the Western Wall, where he was seen shedding tears. He also traveled to the south and was shocked by the scenes of the Hamas atrocities. Milei has now revealed that he has Jewish roots. In a speech at the Chabad Synagogue in Bal Harbor, Florida, Milei recounted that his grandfather was Jewish. Quote, "My grandfather was truly a great influence. I used to learn values from him and learned a lot," Milei said, speaking in Spanish with a simultaneous translation. Continuing, "The most interesting thing is that shortly before he died, he discovered that he was Jewish. He didn't know, but someone told him, 'Your mother was Jewish, so you are Jewish.'" If you didn't know, uh, that's the Jewish definition of whether you're a Jew or not, is if your mother was Jewish. Your father determines the tribe that you're in, but your mother determines whether you're Jewish. So that's Judaism. From our point of view, we haven't adopted that point of view. We have scattered Israel all throughout the world. And you simply find out what tribe. I mean, you do have people that are adopted into the house of Israel, but I have all these quotes that talk about the fact that the vast majority of the church is literally descended from Israel. And I don't think it has anything to do with who your mother is. That's, I think, strictly a Jewish thing. And so, from our point of view, the fact that he does have the blood of Israel in him and that his grandfather was Jewish, I would view him as Jewish from our point of view. Okay, so let's go back here. The meeting at the Casa Rosada occurred while Elder Cook, a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, was in Argentina for the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square's centennial celebration of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ in South America. That's another thing I think is really significant. I've already done a video about it, but it's interesting that you have this taking place, an apostle, or in other words, a prophet, meeting with a Jewish president or head of state of Argentina. This is significant. That's why I think this is a landmark moment. As far as I know, this is only the second Jewish head of state that a prophet has met with. If you know of any others, please let me know so I can add them to the spreadsheet. But you can see that our prophets and apostles are having significant contact with Jews all across the world. Again, both inside Israel and sometimes in Jerusalem, and also outside of Israel. There's been a lot. I mean, we've already had 3 this year, 1 in May and then 2 in August. And they're different. They're different. So this one is the head of state. We're going to cover this one in just a minute. You have these different rabbis that have met with the apostles. Right here, we have the chief rabbi of Norway. Let's see, government leaders back in 2015. The mayor of Jerusalem in 2015. So it's just, there's a lot of contact with significant, prominent people in the Jewish community. You don't think that that would qualify as the prophecy of the 2 witnesses? And I don't mean to speak down to you, but you think that it's supposed to be just street preaching and that's it? It's not supposed to be talking to the elders of Israel, the elders of Judaism. I think that this is probably fulfilling prophecy, the prophecy of the 2 witnesses. And I know there's a part about them dying and laying in the streets, and maybe we will literally see that happen. Maybe some parts of that are symbolic or it's not exactly what we think, but I don't think that any of this would negate that. What if we have, a trip of 2 of our apostles, they go to the BYU Jerusalem Center and then something happens, or while they're, touring religious sites in Jerusalem, just like President Nelson and Elder Holland were about to do in 2018. Now, had they stayed, I don't think anything would have happened, but maybe one of these times that's what's going to happen. Okay, so let's go back to this. I think that's all I have from... No, there's more. Elder Cook was accompanied by South America South Area President Elder Joaquin E. Costa, Tabernacle Choir President Michael O. Levitt, and Church Hosting Director Gordon H. Smith. Quote, "Among all of our meetings, the meeting with President Milei was a standout," Brother Smith said. "It was important to the church because when you meet with the chief executive of a nation, it sends a message to the entire government that you count, that you're included, that you matter." And I would say in this case, not just the nation of Argentina, but possibly to Jews who are watching that know that Milei has plans to convert to Judaism. Who knows what he's going to do after he leaves office? Maybe he's going to get really, really involved in Judaism. Maybe he'll become a rabbi. Maybe he'll become just a public figure in Judaism. And having had this contact with an apostle, it may go a long way. All right. Okay, now, and by the way, here's the Tabernacle Choir. I kind of want to create a spreadsheet for the different performances that the Tabernacle Choir goes to. But it's just, there's so many. It's like I want to capture like the really significant ones. Like this, I feel like would be a significant one because it's celebrating the centennial of the dedication of South America for the preaching of the gospel. I'm going to have to think about it. But let's go ahead and move on to the second article. So again, this happened in the same month, in August. You have these two meetings with Jewish people, or one person that's going to become Jewish according to Judaism, but in one sense he already is, and he's a head of state. And then you have this. Latter-day Saints and American Jewish Committee deepen friendship through dialogue. A 13-person delegation from the American Jewish Committee, or AJC, visited Salt Lake City from August 11th through the 13th to meet with leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The visit, which focused on dialogue and bridge building, allowed the global Jewish advocacy, and look at that, the global Jewish advocacy group to deepen their understanding of the church's work. The group visited key sites in Salt Lake City and Provo, including Brigham Young University, Welfare Square, and the Humanitarian Center, where they assembled cleaning kits for disaster relief. During dinner on Tuesday, the AJC delegation shared impressions from their visit and gifted church leaders and hosting volunteers with challah bread as a symbol of shared values and hospitality. Rabbi Noam Marins, AJC's Director of Interreligious Affairs, compared the church's hosting efforts to the welcoming spirit that Abraham and Sarah displayed in Genesis 18 of the Old Testament. And then here you go. They met with Elder Stevenson, another contact between a prophet, seer, revelator, and someone who's Jewish. And this is a significant organization. In just a minute, we're going to read a quote from Joyce, Silberstang of the AJC Executive Council in just a second. For Elder Gary E. Stevenson of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, who joined the group for dinner, the experience was nostalgic. It reminded him of associations he had with Jewish colleagues as a young businessman in the sporting goods industry. Quote, "We became such dear friends with so many of them, attending bar and bat mitzvahs and weddings," Elder Stevenson said. "This is just overwhelming to me to have this interaction again, which brings a rush of feelings back of the love and appreciation for you and who you are." End quote. Also at the dinner was Elder Matthew S. Holland, a General Authority 70, and former Raoul Wallenberg Scholar at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. After learning more about the church's global humanitarian efforts earlier on Tuesday, Silberstang said she was, quote-unquote, totally blown away. I feel like that's significant. That's the impact that this meeting had on her, coming in contact with the church. So you don't think that, again, with the two witnesses and their purpose. I really think, you guys, that all of this is preparing for the second coming and the millennium. A lot of these people, if not all of them, are going to make it through into the millennium. And to already have these bridges built and relationships, it's going to be important as we transition from this world into the next one. And I don't know how many Jews are going to convert at the time that Christ comes. The scriptures make it seem as though like all of them will recognize him this time. And if that's the case, think about all these meetings that are happening right now. They already have a relationship with the church. It's like preparing for that time. I wish that we could get her to elaborate on why exactly she was totally blown away. But I'm sure that they felt the Spirit talking with church leadership. Okay, quote, It is evident that we share many faith-based values and that these values inform how we live and what we do. Allow me to name just a few. And then she lists off these Hebrew words, which I think are interesting. Tzedek, which is justice. And by the way, that's where we get Melchizedek. Zedek can mean justice, or also it can mean righteousness. And Melech is king. So it's like king of justice or king of righteousness. So she says Tzedek, Hesed, loving kindness. And we all know that President Nelson has, I think, brought this up more than just once, the word Hesed. He, not only that, but I can't remember, but I think he's also talked about a couple other Hebrew words, but definitely Hesed. And other like General Conference speakers have talked about the word Hesed. Kevod Habriot, human dignity. Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. So it's just interesting. I wonder if they kind of already knew that President Nelson had been talking about Hesed, or I don't know. I just feel like, did they know ahead of time that these words would resonate with us, especially Zedek and Hesed, but more especially Hesed. All right, continuing. It is my hope that moving forward, we deepen our friendship and find new ways to work together to make the world a better place, end quote. Her sentiment was echoed by Elder Stevenson, who said, quote, We are brothers and sisters with the heavy responsibility to build dignity and humanity and understand the things that bring us together and appreciate the differences that we have, end quote. So it's exciting. I can't wait to see who else they end up talking to. I'd really like to know if they've spoken to any other Jewish heads of state. If you know of any, let me know. Or if you just know of any contact whatsoever, let me know so I can add it to this spreadsheet. But I get the feeling that I'm missing quite a bit. And I feel like this prophecy has probably been in the process of fulfillment ever since Orson Hyde all the way up until today. In that 3.5, just like the Institute student manual suggests, is a symbolic number that represents a time of apostasy. I think that's what it is, but that's just my opinion. We'll see. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.